When I pulled into my driveway that March afternoon, the neighborhood looked like a desert. Lawns were yellow, kids weren't outside, and not a single sprinkler hissed. And then I found out why our brand new HOA president Karen had cut off the entire community's water. The kicker, her lawn was still green, her fountain still running. She'd stolen the water for herself and left the rest of us high and dry. That was the day I knew we were going to war. I had just come back to Oak Haven after 6 brutal months in Alabama taking care of my younger brother after spinal surgery. All I wanted was quiet, the smell of pine, my koi pond, maybe a cold beer on the porch. Instead, the place felt like a ghost town. Even the air was different, heavy with a silence that pressed on my ears. My neighbor Roger, who'd been watching the house, looked worn down when I saw him. "She shut it all off," he whispered. "Karen claims the water tank's leaking. Been a week. We've got nothing." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "How can she just do that?" He shrugged. "No one's stopping her." I had one secret advantage: my grandfather's old well drilled long before Oak Haven was even a dream on a developer's blueprint. Roger begged me to keep it quiet, and I agreed. But when I saw his daughter Emma's tired eyes, I told him to bring some containers. By the next morning, a line had formed in my backyard. Mothers with strollers, old men with milk jugs. I kept repeating the same warning: "Don't flaunt it. Don't talk about me. Just take what you need." I wasn't trying to be a hero, but I also wasn't about to let kids go thirsty. Karen didn't take long to react. That afternoon, an email blasted through the HOA portal: mandatory community briefing. Unauthorized water use will result in penalties. She made it sound official, all caps and bureaucratic nonsense. At the clubhouse meeting, she strutted out in a cream pantsuit like she was prosecuting a case in front of the Supreme Court. She flashed photos of rusted pipes, claimed the system was collapsing, and then delivered the dagger: "Unauthorized wells are prohibited." I stood up. "That's not true." She froze for a split second. I laid it out plain: my well was older than the HOA, registered with the county, and completely legal. Her smile twitched, but she doubled down, declaring any private source non-compliant. I demanded paperwork. She didn't have any. People murmured. I could see cracks forming in her authority right there, but Karen wasn't the type to back off. She'd come after me, and she did. The next morning, I woke up to a violation notice zip-tied to my fence. Then came the fake security guards in polo shirts claiming they had the right to inspect. I told them to get a warrant. They left, but not before promising they'd be back. That night, someone prowled around my shed with a flashlight trying to film my pipes. My dog, Shadow, barked until his throat was raw. I stood inside with my fists clenched, asking myself if I'd made a mistake. What if I was just dragging my neighbors deeper into a mess? What if Karen crushed us all? For a moment, I thought about shutting the well down and letting the neighborhood suffer in silence. But then Gary, one of the original board members, showed up at my porch with a rolled-up map, the original property records. My well was right there, inked into history, older than the HOA itself. And Doug, an engineer from the city, confirmed my suspicions. Karen had never filed a single report about pipe damage. It was all smoke and mirrors. That night, I spread the map on my table and invited neighbors to look. Ellie brought a folder 2 inches thick full of bogus citations she'd been given over the years, flowers planted in the wrong color scheme, curtains deemed non-compliant. Tom had been fined for a missing shingle after a hailstorm. Everyone had a story. For the first time, we realized it wasn't just me versus Karen. It was all of us. Word spread. More families came to my porch. The HOA retaliated with more letters, threats of security response, even trespassing notices. Karen thought intimidation would keep us in line, but she underestimated one thing: once people stop being afraid, they start fighting back. And when someone dropped off anonymous photos of Karen's private pipeline showing her fountain running while we were dry, that was the nail in her coffin. The city inspector came within days. His name was Walter, and he worked by the book. He tested my water, reviewed the registration, and declared me 100% compliant. Then we turned our attention to Karen's property. The blueprints didn't lie. She had rerouted the community line straight to her lot. Fraud, theft, endangerment of residents. Walter called it in on the spot using words that sounded like artillery suspension of HOA authority, civil liability, public welfare violation. For the first time in months, I felt the ground shift under her feet, not mine. But Karen wasn't going down quietly. She started showing up on people's lawns at night, just standing there filming their windows. Neighbors woke up to bogus violation letters, non-standard window treatments, unauthorized gatherings. Fear rippled again. But now we had evidence, and evidence is power. The sheriff's office got involved. Doug escalated to the county attorney, and then finally the summons came a public hearing at City Hall. That Friday morning I walked into room 3C with a binder thicker than a Bible. Karen sat across the room, pale but defiant in her white blazer. Behind me, neighbors filled the seats. Roger, Ellie, Tom, all of them quiet, watchful. The commissioners opened with charges: unauthorized water diversion, harassment of residents, obstruction of essential services. Karen tried to spin it. She claimed it was all temporary emergency action. She claimed she had authority under the charter. Then the inspector's report was read aloud and the photos of her fountain were projected for the whole room. The silence was deafening. When it was my turn, I stood at the podium and told them what it felt like to come home from months away and find my neighborhood terrified into silence. I showed them the citations, the letters, the threats. I explained the history of my well, the legality, the way I'd opened my gate not for profit, but for survival. I said, she weaponized the HOA. She turned water, a basic necessity, into a punishment tool. My voice shook, but not from fear. From anger that had been boiling for weeks. Karen tried one last rebuttal, mumbling about vision and miscommunication. No one bought it. The commissioners deliberated only a few minutes before the gavel came down. Effective immediately, the HOA's authority was suspended. Karen was stripped of her title. Her enforcement actions nullified, her case referred for civil review. Just like that, the Queen lost her crown. She stood, gathered her thin folder, and walked out without a word. No one clapped. No one jeered. Everyone just stared as she disappeared through the doors. Outside, the sun hit my face, and for the first time in months, it felt like Oak Haven could breathe again. And here's what I learned: power only works if people stay silent.